Hi everybody. So today let's do a beach scene. I think we can do a fantastic one here. So when I'm looking at doing a beach scene, I kind of think about a couple different things. Like, first of all, where's my horizon going to be? What kind of clouds, composition, and that kind of stuff. So first thing we want to do is get rid of this white, because white is just intimidating for majority of people, myself included. And let's think about our sky and just kind of a base color for that, and let's just fill that in. Okay, so that's just the fill tool here, selecting that and going with the color. So we're going to create a new layer, and from this we'll put in our horizon line and think about where it's going to be. So I'm going to go to the selection tool, check settings. I want to have the rectangle selected, and then think about where it's going to be. So I'm thinking that we'll do our horizon line right about here, so it's not quite halfway. It's a little below it, but that'll kind of pull you into the painting. So I'm thinking that's what we'll do with this. And I'm just going to grab the roller brush right here, the paint roller, and I'm going to just put in some basic underpainting colors to kind of give me an idea of where I want everything to be. Okay, as far as for this, then I'm going to come back up and do the sky the same way, but this is just kind of a quick way to sketch in and get an idea of what you want. So if I want a little bit of a muted brown that'll eventually be sand, then we'll just kind of do some of that in here, like so. And I know I want to have a little bit of the sun coming down through here, so I'm going to go a little bit lighter there. And I'm thinking the waves will kind of come in like this, so up here will be that. So we've got just a little bit of movement going across like this for the waves. So I'm going to grab just a little bit of this bluish purple color here, something like that, and kind of streak that in a little bit. And here as well. Okay. And that gives me that. Now I'm going to come up here. I'm going to invert my selection. So now I have this part. Okay. So I'm going to drop down here and make a layer between these two so I can see about doing the sky. So for the sky, I know we want to go with kind of a really blue, kind of Caribbean type sky. So maybe something like this. If you hit Alt, you can select that blue again and go just a little bit lighter blue. And I'm thinking maybe we'll do the clouds kind of coming in to like this. Okay. And maybe kind of a peachish color here at the bottom. I'm thinking right about there. We can see about doing the sun around here, and we'll go with just a little bit, a little bit darker on, but a little bit grayer for the outside up here, and maybe a little bit blended in here, like so. And maybe a little bit over here, maybe a little bit more saturated blue, something like that. And then here again, edit, invert selection, which you can also use Control-Shift-I, and I want to grab a little bit of this blue because I want to have it echoed down here. Okay, so that is going to give me the beginnings of my underpainting. Very crude, very quick and open. So why do it this way? Well, I know sometimes it can be difficult to figure out what you want your composition to look like. By laying in these blocky colors really quick, it lets you kind of visualize and starts giving you that roadmap for what you want. And so part of that is I'm looking at the composition. So if the sun is going to be our main focal point, okay? So if we're looking at that being the main focal point, let me switch to a little red color here to talk for a second. All right, so this is going to be our main focal, okay? I'm going to have clouds here. My clouds are diagonally pointing in to here. This is pointing in, tracking back in for where the sun is. And these clouds are pointing in as well. And then I'm going to put kind of a subdued waves coming in that will also be directing in. So it's, it's causing this to be my focal point, which is what I want. And it's a little more interesting having it here instead of having it here, because now I have something where I can meander in and I can look here, I can kind of come around and back, and I have enough information where my eye can rest and it's intriguing. Whereas if I just have it here, it might get bored. If I have the horizon line here, it might get bored, and there is a rule of thirds where people talk about having it broken up, your canvas broken up into thirds, and always making sure you're off center. It's a rule, quote unquote. You don't have to follow it completely, but I kind of like thinking about how do I make this a little bit more interesting, because here's the other thing too. So let's say, for example, that I wanted to have this coming in this way. And, well, what if I put a boat or something here? Then I've got it coming here and here, and I've got the interest where I can think about doing that. And I'm kind of getting this flow to my painting. And that's the main thing you want to think about. Not so much the rules of composition, because rules are just made to be broken, but really the interest of it. Again, if the boat is just here or my main subject is just here, it's kind of boring. But if I have it over here, and it kind of gives that interest of, oh, well, where is it going? What is it doing? What's the story behind it? And so it really kind of helps to get that set in there. Okay. So we've got the beginnings of our underpainting, and we've got that. So let's start working on this and figuring out how we want these sky and everything done. So we'll start with the sky. I am going to switch over to the custom brush, and I am going to go with probably the presets of my gouache impressionistic cloud brush, and maybe one of these gouache dry brushes as well. So I'll start with this one because I really like sketching with this one and working through it. These brushes, you can get them on Gumroad. I have a couple different sets. I have one that is a pay whatever you want to pay kind of set, and then I have another which is that plus a lot more brushes added to it that you can buy for the lifetime stuff. So that's all there too. So hopefully this will help, and you can, like I said, you can get those brushes there and then get lifetime updates. If you like this kind of stuff, also feel free to join me over on Patreon, where I put a lot of these lessons that are the step-by-step type lessons as well. So that way you get hours of training for like $3 a month. So it's really good there. All right, so let's start with this here. So I'm going to grab with Alt and select this this darker color here and start kind of fading this in. The gouache brush, oops, it helps if I'm actually on the right layer. The gouache brush will blend with these colors that we already have on there, so we can really use these to make our underpainting. Okay, now I know I want these clouds to be kind of wispy out, so I'm gonna start giving them that shape. of pulling them down into, and again, this is still an underpainting. I'm not trying to get the finished piece right away. I know that we want to do that if you've watched stuff like, Bob Ross, or you're kind of in our drive-through culture where we want everything immediately, a microwave drive-through culture that we have. You want it right now, so this builds up a little differently than that. I'm going to use Alt to select the color and start fading this in, getting some of this blended together. So anyway, the point is that this takes a little time to build up for the way I paint. I recommend painting this way because it works really well. It teaches you to relax and really get it brushed in there impressionistically, but you can get a really nice finished painting, and this tends to work better with digital painting versus trying to get the Bob Ross quick look, mainly because there aren't a whole lot of ways to really replicate that palette knife. I use stencils and stuff to do it with, so you can do it to get that palette knife where it looks like you've got the breaking paint and all that stuff too, so you can do it, but I find that this just works a little bit better for when you're trying to get started painting, and it lets you really kind of loosen up and relax while you're doing it. Okay, so we've definitely got some of those clouds built in now. Alright, so you can see how that's kind of giving the feeling that it's coming out towards you, because they get a little bit wider as they come out. Okay, now I'm going to switch this up, this little bit of a peachish color through here. I want that to come through because I know I want to put it down here later, so I want a little hint of that here. Okay, and I may even go a little bit more with it and paint just a hint along the sunset here. So that's going to give that a nice glow. Hold shift, move my cursor to the left and shrink it down, and then just kind of softly go back over this. Kind of feather it out. Now you can use the palette knife to feather it out, and sometimes I do, actually quite often I do, but this gouache brush works really well for that. Alright, now I want to put a little bit of a orangish brown, maybe something like that, and have it kind of streaked in here, because I want to put a little bit darker cloud. So I'm going to put that there. I'm going to grab a little bit of this blue and kind of go over that some. There we go. And I may do another one right here. One thing I really like about this gouache brush, this impressionistic cloud brush, it blends colors really well, so you can get a lot of color harmony going across and really get some neat looks to everything. Alright, so we're starting to get that laid in really well, and let's zoom in just a bit and kind of focus on some of these clouds to refine them just a little bit. And let's go with the gouache dry brush and see how this one works. So I'm laying this in because it's got a really nice texture to it. that I can lay down and then just lightly go over and kind of soften it back. Like so. Okay, you hold spacebar and left click, you can move your canvas like I'm doing right there. Make that a little bit bigger brush. Kind of want these wispy clouds. And I'm getting a little bit of drag, delay in the brush because it does that when I'm recording. Maybe someday I can get a different recording system or update my graphics card, although I've got a pretty good card. Okay. Alright, there we go. Now I want a little bit of this color. I want to build this out. This brush is good for that, for kind of getting those, looks like broken clouds right there. So if you don't soften it all the way. There we go. That brush does repeat a little bit in the pattern, so that's why I like to soften it, just to kind of break up that digital pattern that it has. And think about your strokes, so not always horizontal, not always vertical, but just kind of this comma shape of stroking it up like that. Okay. So we're getting some of those softened in. Now I'm going to do, if you push Control and click, you can draw this line. And then if you hold Shift, it'll go straight. So what I'm doing there is I'm streaking this across. If you can watch it here, see how it's streaking across? That's flattening out that bottom section, which is what I want. And it's doing it from the sun. Okay. By doing that, it really lets those kind of push back, so that's why I'm doing it. Okay. So those are getting the clouds laid in there. And we can also, you can switch to other ones, like say for example if you wanted to do the marker. The marker works really well for trying to lay in some cloud shapes if you wanted to play around with the actual linear shapes of it. And then you can switch back to your custom brush and kind of soften it. Like so. So it gives you just a little bit of a different feel to it. Okay, and we'll come back and work some more on these. And tighten them up a little bit. All right, but right now I want to jump down here and work on some of the ocean stuff. So we'll go to our mid layer here and start laying in some of this blue. But I'm also going to do this. I'm going to lock the layer like so. So by doing that, I can go over it. I'll come back and soften this horizon, but right now I want to be able to paint on it and not worry about the background, about going over the clouds. Okay, it just makes life easier. But I'm going to switch brushes again, and let's go back to the impressionistic. We can even try the old gouache brush. A little bit darker blue. This old gouache brush kind of works good for these waves. Laying them in. Now I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. When you're doing waves, do this kind of comma, but it doesn't have to be that exaggerated. Shrink this down a little bit more. And just a bit of back and forth. For waves to look right and get that nice ripple effect, you have to kind of let it build. So I find that just by kind of doing this back and forth, we start getting some of that interesting wave texture. I'm going to grab this color a little bit. Same kind of movement, same stroke, just changing the color. Even grabbing a little bit of that sun texture, sun color. And we'll go a little bit bigger. Okay. Now if you find that you've got like a spot that's not really blending in, the heavy blurred frosting can help with that. Kind of soften these edges a little bit so they disappear. And then we'll paint over them like so. We'll just do that for all of these real quick. Because sometimes that roller brush leaves too harsh of an edge. Then you got to overly work to get it to blend in, and it's more trouble than it should be. This should be relaxing. Alright, back to our old gouache brush. I'm going to grab a little bit of this kind of turquoisey color and start introducing that. Like so. Now see where that blended and that gave me that different kind of orangey color? I'm going to do that. Grab it. And blend it across. So this isn't going to be a real turbulent ocean like with the big wave, breaker wave and all that kind of stuff. Just more of a casual beach kind of feel to it. So more subdued, relaxing ocean kind of look. But see, by using these gouache brushes, how it really just kind of gives you that nice blend of colors in the underpainting. Alright, so I know my beach is going to basically be along here, right? So I want it to think about that. So what I'm going to do now is take my brush and I'm going to pull down on all these colors. And I've still got that dirty grayish brown color, which is fine. Can even grab a little bit of this other color. And just kind of pull these down a little bit. Like so. And kind of layer it on each other. Softening the top. Come from the bottom back up. Like so. Alright, now this will get softer as we do this. And you can even take your palette knife and kind of lightly go over it, pulling straight down, and soften some of those streaks so they're not maybe quite as harsh. But we'll be painting over this, so a lot of this is just really going to drop into the background, so it's not that big of a deal. Excuse me. Okay, so we've got some of the underpainting for the ocean, we've got underpainting for some of the sand, and we've got underpainting for the clouds. So you can see by how we took that and blocked in that real quick color, how we were really able to kind of start playing around with our composition. Now the nice thing about doing it this way, so kind of got this blocked in, you know, something where we think we know what we're going to go. But if you got this far, you're going to know if this is what you want to go with or not. If this is what you want to keep. Is something off in the perspective? Is something off on your technique? So doing these broad strokes of color and broad strokes of bringing everything in is a great way to start saying, okay, what do I like? What do I not like? What do I want to fix? What do I want to adjust? All right. So this is a good place to do that and to really give you that feel for what you like and what you don't. So this helps basically get rid of that blank canvas and really kind of see where you're at with stuff. So, all right, I'm going to save this real quick and then we'll get started on the next part.